Marcus Chen adjusted his ceremonial collar for the 15th time as the diplomatic shuttle descended through Etheria Prime's aurora-painted atmosphere. The translation implant behind his ear buzzed with nervous energy, probably picking up his anxiety and converting it into what the Veiltherans would interpret as mildly constipated in 7 dimensions. "Breathe, Ambassador," his aide whispered. "Remember, they can literally smell fear, also embarrassment, and that thing you had for breakfast." The crystalline spires of the Veiltheran capital rose like frozen music, each structure humming with bioluminescent veins that pulsed in harmonious patterns. Marcus had studied the architecture for months, but seeing it in person made his human brain ache pleasantly. It was like trying to appreciate a symphony with your eyes. The shuttle's doors hissed open, and Marcus stepped onto the landing platform. Immediately, a fountain of phosphorescent water erupted directly in front of him. He jumped backward, colliding with a ceremonial gong that released a sound like a dying whale with perfect pitch. "The greeting fountain recognizes your noble spirit," announced a voice that seemed to come from the very air. Marcus looked around for the speaker and found himself face to face with what appeared to be a living tree wearing diplomatic robes. "Thank you," Marcus said, water dripping from his formal jacket. "I feel very recognized." The tree person's bark shifted into what might have been a smile. "I am First Speaker Velnesh. Welcome to our world, small round-eared one." Marcus had practiced this moment countless times. He raised his hands in what his briefings assured him was the traditional Veiltheran greeting of peaceful intent. Instead, every light in the vicinity began flashing red. "Fascinating," Velnesh observed. "You have just declared your intention to marry my grandmother and steal our sacred crystals. A bold opening gambit." That wasn't." Marcus frantically consulted his wrist display. "The gesture for peaceful greeting. That would be this." Velnesh demonstrated a complex hand movement that looked like conducting an invisible orchestra while solving a Rubik's Cube. As Marcus attempted to replicate the gesture, he accidentally activated his emergency beacon. The piercing alarm echoed across the platform, causing several nearby Veiltherans to shift their skin to alarmed purple and their elongated ears to flatten against their heads. "Perhaps," Velnesh suggested gently, "we should proceed to the throne room before you inadvertently declare war on our moon." The procession through the palace corridors was a masterclass in barely contained disaster. Marcus marveled at the walls that shifted between translucency and opacity based on the occupants' emotional states. Unfortunately, his constant amazement was causing the walls to strobe like a cosmic disco, making several courtiers stumble into each other. "Try thinking of something boring," Velnesh advised. "Tax calculations work well." The throne room doors, massive constructs of living crystal that sang in harmony as they opened, revealed a space that defied every law of physics Marcus thought he knew. The ceiling existed in several dimensions simultaneously. Courtiers floated at various levels of gravity, and in the center of it all, on a platform that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, sat the royal family. King Zephyron was exactly what Marcus expected from the briefings: imposing, radiating authority, with skin that shifted through deep blues and purples. Queen Lysandra beside him was elegance personified, her elongated ears adorned with jewelry that appeared to be captured auroras. But it was Princess Zaralyn who made Marcus forget every diplomatic protocol he'd ever learned. She sat with perfect posture, her long ears gracefully curved, skin glowing with a soft silver radiance that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. When their eyes met, something impossible happened. The translation implant went completely silent, as if her gaze spoke a language that needed no interpretation. Then Marcus walked directly into the ceremonial greeting pool. The splash echoed through the throne room with the dignity of a dropped cafeteria tray. Phosphorescent water soaked through his formal attire as he flailed, trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic composure while apparently drowning in 18 inches of ceremonially significant liquid. From her throne, Princess Zaralyn's perfectly controlled expression cracked. A sound escaped her, musical, bright, unmistakably laughter. The sound rippled through the court like a pebble dropped in still water, causing several nobles to shift their skin to surprised yellow. "Rise, Ambassador Chen of Earth," King Zephyron intoned, though Marcus detected what might have been amusement in the royal voice. "Welcome to Etheria Prime. We see you have already tested our hospitality pools." Marcus struggled to his feet, water cascading from his formal robes. "Your Majesty, I apologize for—" "No apology necessary," the king interrupted. "In our culture, one who approaches the throne with such enthusiasm is considered either very brave or very foolish. Time will tell which you are." As Marcus attempted a formal bow while simultaneously trying to wring water from his sleeves, he caught Princess Zaralyn's eye again. She had returned to her composed royal mask, but he was certain he saw her lips twitch with suppressed mirth. "Perhaps," Queen Lysandra suggested, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, "our guest would benefit from a change of attire before we begin formal negotiations." "An excellent suggestion," Marcus agreed, then added without thinking, "though I have to say your greeting fountain has quite a kick to it." The comment hung in the air for a moment before Princess Zaralyn lost her composure entirely. Her laughter was like silver bells, infectious and genuine. Soon half the court was chuckling, their skin shifting to warm, pleased colors. King Zephron's stern expression softened slightly. "Indeed, Ambassador, we may find these negotiations more interesting than anticipated." 3 weeks into his diplomatic mission, Marcus had mastered exactly 2 things: how to avoid the greeting fountains and how to make Princess Zaralyn laugh. The second skill was proving far more valuable than the first. "So you're telling me," Zaralyn said, her elongated ears twitching with amusement, "that humans actually consume liquid that makes them lose motor control and call it fun?" They sat in the abandoned quantum gardens, where temporal distortions meant their conversations existed in pockets of accelerated time. To the outside world, they'd been gone for mere minutes. In reality, they'd been talking for hours. "Alcohol is a social lubricant," Marcus explained, then immediately regretted his word choice as Zaralyn's skin shifted to an intrigued pink. "I mean, it helps people relax." And this relaxation involves singing off-key and making poor romantic decisions. "You've been reading Earth cultural reports, haven't you?" My diplomatic education was very thorough. Her ears curved in what he'd learned was the Veiltheran equivalent of a smirk. "Though I'm still confused by your mating rituals, something called sliding into DMs." Marcus nearly choked on the crystalline fruit she'd shared with him. "Where exactly are you getting this information?" "The quantum network picks up your planet's communication signals. My tutor thought it was important to understand human courtship strategies." She paused, her skin cycling through several colors Marcus was still learning to interpret. "Your species seems remarkably inefficient at expressing romantic interest," says the princess, whose people communicate emotions through skin color changes. "Do you have any idea how confusing it is when someone turns purple? Is that anger, indigestion, existential dread?" "Purple is contemplative attraction with undertones of philosophical uncertainty," Zaralyn replied matter-of-factly. "Of course it is." Marcus leaned back against a temporal flux tree, watching its leaves exist in several moments simultaneously. "What color am I supposed to turn when I think you're the most fascinating person I've ever met, but I'm diplomatically obligated to pretend we're just discussing trade agreements?" The question slipped out before his diplomatic training could stop it. Zaralyn's skin shifted rapidly through a spectrum he'd never seen before, silver to gold to something that looked like captured starlight. "That would be complicated," she said softly. Before either could analyze the implications, Marcus accidentally leaned against what looked like a harmless crystal formation. The quantum garden exploded with sensation as an ancient empathy device activated, linking their minds for a brief, overwhelming moment. The connection lasted perhaps 3 seconds in real time, but in those seconds, Marcus felt everything: Zaralyn's loneliness, her intelligence, her curiosity about the strange human who made her laugh. And underneath it all, something that made his breath catch: the same growing affection he'd been trying to suppress in himself. The link shattered as quickly as it had formed, leaving them staring at each other in stunned silence. "Well," Marcus said finally, "that was either incredibly romantic or a complete diplomatic disaster." "Why not both?" Zaralyn's voice was shaky, but she was smiling. "Your Highness," came a voice from the garden's edge. Both jumped apart as if they'd been caught doing something far more scandalous than accidentally linking minds through ancient alien technology. Captain Thexmer of the Royal Guard emerged from behind a temporal distortion, his expression unreadable. His skin maintained the neutral blue-gray of official duty, but his ears were rigidly upright, never a good sign. "The Queen requests your presence for the evening meal," Thexmer announced. "Immediately." "Of course," Zaralyn replied, instantly switching to her royal demeanor. "Ambassador Chen was just showing me human diplomatic protocols." "I'm sure he was," Thexmer said dryly. "Ambassador, your aide is looking for you. Something about urgent communications from Earth, and why does your beacon keep activating?" As they walked back through the palace corridors, Marcus noticed how Zaralyn's skin had returned to its controlled, neutral silver. But her ears, those wonderfully expressive ears, kept tilting in his direction, as if drawn by some magnetic force. "Princess," he said quietly, "about what happened in the garden." "Ancient empathy devices are notoriously unreliable," she interrupted, but her voice lacked conviction. "They often create false impressions, mistaken connections." "Right, false impressions." They reached the junction where their paths diverged, she to the royal dining hall, he to his diplomatic quarters. For a moment they hesitated. "Marcus," she said, using his given name for the first time. "Tomorrow's negotiation, the trade route discussions." "Yes. Perhaps afterward you'd like to see more of our gardens. There are sections with fascinating, botanical specimens." "I'd like that very much, Your Highness." "Zara," the word was barely a whisper. "When we're alone, just Zara." As she walked away, her skin flickered briefly to that same impossible color he'd seen when the empathy device activated. Like captured starlight, like hope, like something that had no name in any language but meant everything. Captain Thexmer watched the exchange with the weary expression of someone who'd seen this particular type of diplomatic complication before. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "a word of advice." "Yes." "The quantum gardens have surveillance crystals in sectors 7 through 12. Sector 13, however, has been experiencing technical difficulties." Marcus stared at him. "Are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting nothing. I'm merely informing you of a maintenance issue that will likely take several more weeks to resolve." Thexmer's skin shifted to the faintest hint of conspiratorial amber. "Carry on, Ambassador." As Marcus returned to his quarters, his mind raced with implications, possibilities, and the memory of 3 seconds when he'd felt truly understood by someone whose entire existence defied everything he thought he knew about connection, about love, about the vast loneliness of space. His communication device was indeed blinking urgently, but for the first time since arriving on Etheria Prime, Earth's demands felt very far away. The announcement came during Marcus's morning briefing with his aide, delivered with all the ceremonial weight of a cosmic funeral. The holographic proclamation materialized in his quarters, complete with trumpets that existed in 17 dimensions, and hurt his ears in ways he didn't know were possible. "By royal decree," the announcement boomed, "Princess Zaralyn, heir to the Sapphire Throne, is betrothed to Duke Kethmer of the Crystal Nebula. The union shall strengthen our empire's outer rim defenses and bring prosperity to both houses." Marcus stared at the fading hologram, feeling like he'd been hit by a metaphysical transport shuttle. "Sir," his aide prompted, The colonial authorities' message. Marcus blinked, refocusing on the second piece of catastrophic news that had arrived that morning. Earth's communication appeared on his personal display, bureaucratic efficiency wrapped in passive-aggressive urgency. Ambassador Chen, the message began, your extended negotiations have raised concerns about your effectiveness. We're dispatching Ambassador Rodriguez to conclude trade discussions. You have 2 weeks to wrap up cultural exchanges before reassignment. Reassignment, Marcus repeated numbly. They're recalling me. It gets worse, sir. Rodriguez specializes in efficient diplomacy. Last posting, he concluded negotiations with the Centauri Trade Federation in 3 days. Hell, he agreed to everything they wanted and called it streamlined decision-making. Marcus spent the rest of the morning walking the palace corridors in a daze, automatically avoiding the greeting fountains while his mind processed the implications. Somewhere in this crystalline maze, Zara was probably receiving congratulations on her politically advantageous engagement to someone she'd never mentioned, never even hinted at caring about. He found her in Sector 13 of the Quantum Gardens, sitting beneath a probability tree whose fruit existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. She was staring at a piece of fruit that flickered between being an apple, a geometric impossibility, and occasionally a small, confused bird. I hear congratulations are in order, Marcus said, settling beside her on the temporal bench. Duke Kethmer is very accomplished, Zara replied in the tone of someone describing a particularly efficient filing system. He's conquered 3 solar systems, established 17 trade routes, and has never laughed at anything in his documented existence. Sounds like a catch. His idea of romance is reciting the terms of mineral extraction treaties. Her skin shifted to a color Marcus had never seen before, somewhere between despair and bitter amusement. Apparently, I found his discussion of orbital mining rights intellectually stimulating. Did you? I fell asleep, but my diplomatic training taught me to nod at appropriate intervals. They sat in comfortable misery, watching the probability fruit cycle through its potential existences. Occasionally it became something completely impossible, like a small planet or a philosophical concept with wings. I'm being recalled to Earth, Marcus said eventually. Zara's ears drooped. When? 2 weeks. They're sending someone more efficient to replace me. Efficient. The kind of diplomat who considers cultural exchange a waste of time and thinks learning alien customs is optional. Marcus picked up a quantum pebble that existed in several places at once. He'll probably try to shake hands with your father and accidentally declare war on your breakfast. Despite everything, Zara laughed. The sound caused nearby luminescent flowers to bloom out of season. The betrothal ceremony is in 10 days, she said quietly. There will be guests from across the galaxy. Quantum fireworks and Duke Kethmer will present me with a ceremonial asteroid as a symbol of his devotion. An asteroid, rich in rare minerals, very practical. Her skin flickered through several shades of resigned melancholy. He had it hollowed out and filled with efficiency reports from his various conquests. Your Highness, Zara, Marcus turned to face her fully. In all our conversations, have we ever discussed what you actually want? Want? She seemed genuinely puzzled by the concept. I'm a princess. I want what's best for my people. That's what you're supposed to want. What do you want? Zara was quiet for so long that the probability fruit cycled through 43 potential states, briefly becoming a miniature galaxy, before settling on something that looked like crystallized music. I want to laugh every day, she said finally. I want someone to explain human customs that make no sense, like why you put tiny umbrellas in drinks or why you say, bless you, when someone sneezes. I want to share quantum fruit with someone who thinks it's as amazing as I do, even when it accidentally becomes a philosophical concept. Her voice grew softer. I want someone to look at me and see Zara, not Princess Zaralyn, heir to the sapphire throne, future unity of houses, first daughter of the crystalline dynasty. I see Zara, Marcus said. I've always seen Zara. I know. Her skin shifted to that impossible starlight color again. That's the problem. Before either could say more, Captain Thexmer appeared at the garden's edge, moving with the urgency of someone carrying bad news. Your Highness, Ambassador, he said formally, then dropped his voice. We have a situation. The Duke arrived early for the betrothal ceremony. He's in the throne room right now, presenting the Queen with a detailed analysis of his reproductive capabilities and a 5-year plan for heir production. Oh no, Zara whispered. It gets worse. He's brought his entire court, including something called a efficiency optimization specialist, who's been measuring the palace corridors and suggesting improvements. Marcus stood, diplomatic instincts kicking in despite his personal turmoil. What kind of improvements? Straight lines. He believes curved corridors are aesthetically wasteful and wants to install directional plasma conduits for faster travel times. He wants to turn the palace into a space station, Zara said in horror. A very efficient space station, Thexmer corrected. He's also questioned why we need gardens at all when hydroponic food production would be more practical. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances. Whatever was happening between them personally, they both understood that some things transcended politics, duty, and the impossible distance between their worlds. Captain, Marcus said, how long do we have before the formal introductions? 2 hours, why? Because, Marcus said, offering Zara his hand. I think it's time the Duke learned about the cultural significance of quantum gardens. All of them in great detail. Zara's smile was radiant as she took his hand. That could take hours. Days even, Marcus agreed. These things are very complex. As they headed deeper into the gardens, Thexmer called after them. Sector 13 surveillance is still malfunctioning. Technical difficulties are so inconvenient, Zara called back, her skin glowing with mischievous gold. Terrible timing, Marcus agreed, and for the first time in days, the weight of impossible circumstances felt just a little bit lighter. The wedding preparations had turned the palace into a circus of cosmic proportions. Orbital decorators floated through the corridors, installing quantum streamers that existed in 17 dimensions and hurt Marcus's eyes to look at directly. The ceremonial asteroid, Duke Kethmer's romantic gesture, had been positioned in the palace's central courtyard, where it hovered ominously while emitting efficiency reports in holographic text. The Duke requests changes to the menu, announced a harried palace coordinator, her skin cycling rapidly between stressed orange and diplomatic beige. He considers flavor an unnecessary variable and suggests nutrient paste for optimal digestive efficiency. Marcus found Zara in the royal kitchen, teaching the confused chef how to make human-style sandwiches. The chef, a being composed entirely of aromatic steam, was having philosophical difficulties with the concept of putting food between bread. But why hide the ingredients? The chef wailed, his vaporous form shimmering with distress. Food should be celebrated, not concealed. It's not hiding, Zara explained patiently, it's strategic layering. Your future husband has banned strategic layering, Marcus said, joining them. Along with garnishes, seasoning, and anything that takes longer than 3 minutes to consume. The chef dissipated entirely in horror before reforming with an expression of existential dread. He wants to schedule meal times for maximum nutritional absorption efficiency. Romantic, Marcus said dryly. Zara's ears drooped. The ceremony is tomorrow. After that, I'll be relocating to the Crystal Nebula, where Duke Kethmer has built a palace that's described as functionally optimal and aesthetically sufficient. Sounds charming. I bet the gift shop sells commemorative efficiency reports. Despite everything, she laughed. The sound caused the chef to solidify slightly and begin humming what might have been a hopeful tune. Ambassador Chen, came a voice from the kitchen entrance. Ambassador Rodriguez stood there, his presence as efficiently uninspiring as his reputation suggested. I need to discuss the transition protocols. Marcus's heart sank. His replacement had arrived a day early, probably for maximum efficiency. Of course, Marcus said. Princess, if you'll excuse me. Actually, Rodriguez interrupted, I've already concluded the trade negotiations. Took 47 minutes. We agreed to their terms, they agreed to ours, everybody wins. What terms? Zara asked, her diplomatic training evident in the careful neutrality of her voice. Standard package. Earth gets mineral rights to 12 systems, they get our entertainment broadcasts. Simple. Marcus stared at him. You gave them our entertainment broadcasts. Cultural exchange builds bridges, Rodriguez said proudly. Speaking of which, I should mention, the Duke is fascinated by something called reality television. He's planning to implement it in his territories, says it will help identify inefficient citizens. The chef dissipated again. This time, he didn't reform. That evening, Marcus found himself in Sector 13 for what would be their final private meeting. The quantum gardens seemed to sense the approaching end, their temporal distortions creating pockets of slowed time that stretched their moments together like pulled taffy. Zara arrived carrying a bottle of something that glowed softly blue and smelled like starlight mixed with regret. Veiltherin ceremonial wine, she explained. It's traditional to drink it before making life-changing decisions, such as marriages, coronations, declaring war, the usual. She poured 2 glasses that seemed to contain liquid light, also for saying goodbye to impossible things. They sat beneath their favorite probability tree, watching its fruit cycle through potential realities. Tonight it seemed particularly creative, becoming a tiny sun, a geometric proof, and once memorably, a small dragon that winked at them before transforming into a mathematical equation. Tomorrow, Zara said, I'll stand in front of representatives from across the galaxy and promise to love, honor, and optimize my life with Duke Kethmer. And I'll be on a transport back to Earth, where I'll spend the rest of my career explaining why I failed to secure more favorable trade terms. Because you were busy falling in love with an alien princess. Because I was busy learning that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than I ever imagined. Marcus turned to face her fully. Zara, I need to tell you something before tomorrow changes everything. She set down her wine glass, her skin shifting to a color that looked like anticipation mixed with terror. I know we can't be together, Marcus continued. I know this is impossible, that it defies politics and biology and the basic physics of 2 people from different worlds. But I need you to know that these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. Marcus, I'm not finished. His diplomatic training abandoned him entirely as the words he'd been carrying in his chest finally broke free. I love your laugh and the way your ears tilt when you're thinking. I love how you make the impossible seem logical and the mundane seem magical. I love that you see wonder in probability fruit and find humor in diplomatic disasters. His voice grew stronger, more certain. I love you, Zara. And if this were any other universe, in any other circumstances, I would want to build a life with you. I want to wake up every morning and learn something new about how your mind works. I want to teach our children about both our worlds and watch them grow up bilingual in human and Veiltherin wonder. The words hung in the crystalline air between them like a bridge, across impossible distance. I want to start a family with you, he said simply. The effect was immediate and devastating. Zara's carefully maintained royal composure shattered completely as tears began streaming down her face, not the silver tears of sadness, but something Marcus had never seen before. Pure starlight leaked from her eyes, each drop catching the garden's bioluminescent glow and creating tiny galaxies that floated in the air around them. You can't say that, she whispered, but there was no anger in her voice, only the sound of someone whose deepest secret had just been spoken aloud by the one person who wasn't supposed to understand. Why not? Because I've dreamed of it every night since we met. The confession broke from her like water through a dam. Because there are legends, Marcus, Old stories about soul bonds that transcend species, about unions that could bridge worlds. Because when that empathy device linked our minds, I felt something I didn't know was possible. She stood, pacing through the temporal distortions that made her movements seem like a dance across multiple moments. Because when I imagine the future, it's not filled with efficiency reports and strategic alliances. It's filled with teaching you to read Veiltheran poetry and learning to appreciate human music that doesn't exist in mathematical equations. Then why? Because I'm a princess. The words exploded from her with all the force of a lifetime's worth of duty and sacrifice. Because my marriage isn't about love, it's about preventing wars and maintaining stability. Because if I follow my heart, people die. Marcus stood and moved toward her but stopped just short of touching. In the garden's shifting light, with starlight tears still falling from her eyes, she looked like something from a fairy tale, beautiful, impossible, and utterly untouchable. What if there was another way? He asked quietly. There isn't. What if we made one? Before she could answer, the quantum garden around them began to respond to their emotional resonance. The air shimmered, colors bled between dimensions, and slowly, impossibly, light began to gather around them. Not the gentle bioluminescence of the palace, but something far more dramatic, a beacon of pure energy that rose from their shared heartbreak and reached toward the stars. Marcus, Zara whispered, staring at the light column surrounding them, what's happening? I think, he said, taking her hand as the beacon grew brighter, we're about to find out if love really can transcend the impossible. Above them, the light pierced through the palace roof, through the atmosphere, creating a signal that could be seen from orbit. A signal that announced to both worlds that something unprecedented was happening in the quantum gardens of Etheria Prime. Something that looked suspiciously like hope. The light beacon could be seen from 3 star systems. Marcus learned this fact while sitting in a detention cell that had been optimized for maximum efficiency by Duke Kethmer's people. The walls were perfectly smooth. The gravity was precisely calibrated, and there was absolutely nothing to do except contemplate how spectacularly his diplomatic career had imploded. Ambassador Chen, came a voice through the cell's communication array. You have a visitor. Marcus expected his lawyer, or perhaps Ambassador Rodriguez, coming to gloat about superior efficiency. Instead, Captain Thexmer stepped through the cell door, carrying what appeared to be a tray of food and wearing an expression of barely suppressed amusement. Captain, Marcus said, I'm fairly certain visiting the disgraced human diplomat isn't in your job description. Neither is smuggling quantum wine into detention facilities, Thexmer replied, producing a bottle from beneath what Marcus had assumed was a meal tray. But these are extraordinary circumstances. How extraordinary are we talking? Thexmer's skin shifted to what Marcus had learned was the color of cosmic irony. Well, for starters, your little light show 3 nights ago has triggered the largest civil rights movement in Veiltheran history. Beings across the galaxy are questioning why ancient prejudices should dictate who they love. And Princess Zara, under house arrest in the East Tower. Duke Kethmer is demanding she undergo compatibility therapy to correct her emotional inefficiencies. Thexmer poured 2 glasses of the glowing wine. He's also requested that Earth provide him with more reality television shows for research purposes. Marcus nearly choked on his drink. Research. He believes human entertainment will help him understand optimal relationship dynamics. He's particularly fascinated by something called The Bachelor. Dear God, what have we done? Started a revolution, apparently. Thexmer activated his wrist communicator, displaying news feeds from across the galaxy. Look at this. Protests on 12 worlds, including Earth. Humans are demanding to know why their ambassador is being detained for declaring love. Young Veiltherans are organizing compatibility rebellion gatherings where mixed-species couples share quantum fruit. Marcus watched the feeds in amazement. On Earth, Protesters carried signs reading "Love is Universal" and "Free Ambassador Chen." On Veiltharan worlds, beings were changing their skin colors to solidarity patterns he'd never seen before. "There's more," Thexmer continued. "Remember that light beacon you two created? Hard to forget. Our scientists have been studying it. Apparently, when two beings experience that level of emotional resonance, it creates measurable changes in local space-time. They're calling it quantum entanglement of consciousness." That sounds made up. Most of the best science does initially. Thexmer leaned forward conspiratorially. "But here's the interesting part. The readings they took from both of you during the event show something unprecedented. Your DNA patterns were starting to harmonize." Marcus stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means," came a familiar voice from the doorway, "that we might actually be biologically compatible." Marcus's heart stopped as Zara stepped into the cell, flanked by two guards who were making a remarkable effort to look like they weren't helping a princess escape house arrest. "Your Highness," Marcus said, standing so quickly he nearly fell over, "you shouldn't be here." "I'm technically still under arrest," she replied cheerfully. "Captain Thexmer pointed out that prisoners are allowed medical consultations, and I claimed I needed to discuss the quantum entanglement findings with the other test subject." "Duke Kethmer's fleet is approaching," one guard announced. "He's demanding immediate compliance with the betrothal contract." "How many ships?" Thexmer asked. 17 battlecruisers and something he calls an efficiency enforcement vessel." "What's an efficiency enforcement vessel?" Marcus asked. "Think of the most boring spaceship possible," Zara replied. "Then remove any features that might spark joy." The detention facility shook as ships began landing outside. Through the cell's small window, Marcus could see Duke Kethmer's forces deploying in perfectly organized formations that somehow managed to be menacing and tedious simultaneously. "Princess Zaralyn," came an amplified voice that sounded like bureaucracy given sound. "You will report for immediate wedding ceremony optimization." "He wants to get married right now?" Marcus asked. "Apparently our little rebellion is causing what he calls inefficient emotional disturbances across his territories," Zara explained. "He believes a quick wedding will restore order. And if you refuse, he'll implement population efficiency protocols in my home system." The cell door burst open as Duke Kethmer himself strode in, flanked by beings in matching gray uniforms who looked like they'd had their personalities surgically removed. The Duke was exactly as Marcus had imagined, tall, imposing, with the charisma of a tax audit and the romantic sensitivity of a quantum calculator. "Princess," the Duke announced, "ceremony begins in 17 minutes. I have prepared optimal vows for maximum emotional efficiency." "How romantic," Zara said dryly. "Did you write them yourself or did your efficiency optimization specialist help?" "Team effort. We eliminated all unnecessary sentiment and focused on practical considerations such as reproductive scheduling and resource allocation." Marcus stepped forward, his diplomatic training finally kicking in after days of personal crisis. "Your Grace, perhaps we could discuss the human." Duke Kethmer turned to regard Marcus with the interest one might show a particularly ineffective kitchen appliance. "You will observe the ceremony to understand the futility of your emotional inefficiency." "Actually," Marcus said, "I'd like to make a counter-proposal." The Duke's expression suggested this was roughly equivalent to a houseplant offering tax advice. "You wish to negotiate." "I wish to challenge the betrothal contract on the grounds of biological incompatibility." The room fell silent except for the gentle humming of quantum wine glasses, vibrating in harmony with everyone's elevated stress levels. "Explain," the Duke commanded. Marcus took Zara's hand, and immediately the air around them began to shimmer with the same energy that had created their beacon. "Recent scientific analysis has shown that Princess Zara and I share quantum entanglement at the consciousness level. Our DNA patterns harmonize in ways that suggest biological compatibility," previously thought impossible between species. Ridiculous, the Duke scoffed, but Marcus noticed several of his efficiency experts were taking readings with increasingly confused expressions. Furthermore, Marcus continued, galactic law states that no being can be compelled to marry someone with whom they share no biological compatibility when a more compatible option exists. That law refers to same-species partnerships, the Duke protested. It doesn't specify species limitations, Zara interjected, her legal education finally proving useful for something other than trade negotiations. The law simply states biological compatibility between consenting beings. One of the efficiency experts approached the Duke with a data pad that was flashing urgent readings. The Duke's expression shifted from confident superiority to the particular dismay of someone whose carefully organized universe was becoming inconveniently complicated. The readings are anomalous, the expert admitted. There appears to be genuine quantum resonance between the subjects that extends beyond known biological parameters. Run the tests again, the Duke ordered. We have 17 times. The results are consistent. Marcus squeezed Zara's hand, and the energy around them intensified, causing several of the Duke's instruments to begin playing what sounded suspiciously like wedding music. Your Grace, Captain Thexmer interjected with the timing of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. I should also mention that both Earth and Etheria Prime have issued formal diplomatic protests regarding the detention of their respective representatives. Something about unprecedented violations of interstellar law and really poor timing. The Duke stared at his efficiency reports as they continued to register impossible readings, then at the growing crowd of beings outside who were chanting something that sounded like "Love transcends species" in 17 different languages. This is highly irregular, he said finally. The best things usually are, Marcus replied. For a long moment, the Duke stood in contemplative silence while his worldview underwent rapid and involuntary optimization. Finally, he turned to his efficiency experts. What are the projected costs of maintaining this conflict versus accepting these irregular circumstances? The experts consulted their devices with the desperate concentration of beings whose entire purpose was being challenged by the existence of love. Economically speaking, one admitted reluctantly, continuing this dispute would be inefficient. Duke Kethmer's shoulders sagged with the weight of cosmic irony. Very well, the betrothal contract is dissolved due to biological incompatibility issues. Just like that, Zara asked. Efficiency above all else, the Duke replied wearily, even when it's inconvenient. He paused, then added with what might have been genuine curiosity, though I confess I don't understand how you find happiness in such chaos. Maybe that's the point, Marcus said gently. Love isn't efficient. It's not optimized or calculated or planned. It just is. The Duke considered this with the expression of someone trying to solve an equation that had no numerical solution. Fascinating, completely impractical but fascinating. As the Duke and his forces departed to find more efficiently romantic prospects elsewhere, Marcus and Zara found themselves standing in the detention cell that had somehow become the site of their liberation. So, Zara said, her skin cycling through colors that looked like joy mixed with possibility, what happens now? Now, Marcus replied, we figure out how to build a life together across two worlds, satisfy both our governments, and probably deal with more impossible situations than any reasonable couple should face. That sounds wonderfully inefficient. The best kind of problem to have. Captain Thexmer cleared his throat. If I may suggest, there's still the matter of your respective positions. Earth will need a new ambassador, and Etheria Prime will need representatives who understand both cultures. A joint diplomatic mission, Marcus asked, led by beings who have proven that connection transcends difference, Thexmer agreed. It's either revolutionary or completely insane. Again, Zara said, taking Marcus's hand as the air around them shimmered with quantum possibilities. The best things usually are. Outside the detention facility, beings from a dozen different worlds were celebrating in the streets, their various forms of joy creating a symphony of hope that echoed across the stars. And in Sector 13 of the Quantum Gardens, the probability fruit had settled into a new permanent state, something that looked exactly like a future where love had won against impossible odds. It was the most beautifully inefficient outcome anyone could have imagined.